Hey YouTube, what's up? I want to show you something new that I've got. Um, and if you have followed my channel in the past, you've probably heard me preach and illustrate how I do like practical and utilitarian blade design, right? And that's something I enjoy, and I've showed you why I enjoy this. And further, I've maybe tried to show you how I believe good design will always complement and follow the practicality, right? The function. For example, you can see this in the Kershaw Vapor that I like so much, right? There are so few features on this knife, and yet they all seem to complement the functionality, right? You have the holes here, which of course look good, but also they are there to reduce weight. They put this really chunky pocket clip on here. Why is that? Because it's part of the lock, right? It's the over travel stop for the lock. You have this functional blade design, and now this is complemented by the handle shape, right? You have the straight part here, and then a straight part here in the handle, and then a curved part, which you see represented again here, and of course that fits into your hand, obviously. So the design here, right, complements the functionality, and it is a super functional blade, the Kershaw Vapor, right? That's why I really like it. It's one of my favorites now, even though it's not an expensive knife, and it has good action. But that's not the point, right? The point is that the design complements the functionality, and the functionality of such a knife is very, very high, and that's why I enjoy it, right? Because it's a tool that functions great. Another example, and you don't see that very often on my channel, is maybe this Mora. This is my only fixed blade, and you say, "Oh, Mora, that's a. Are you really going to use that? That's cheap, right? For illustrating some design point." Yes, of course, because right. Again, there are so few features on this, and yet they all make perfect sense for the functionality, right? You have your rubberized grip here. Why? Well, because that's functional. You have these grooves here on the handle, right here, and on the back side, same thing. Is that just to look good? No, I don't think so. I believe that's to give your fingertips feedback or about the position of the knife here too, right on your thumb. That gives you feedback that you're still holding on to the blade just right. So that's design that complements the function, right? Also, a beautiful patina has developed, and right, I've done things to make it more trippy and nice. That again complements the function, right? Well, in fact, it extends the function, right? Beautiful patina also protects you from rust, so that's a good thing, and it looks aged and used, and that's all good, right? That's all good design. You have this heavy butt cap here, right? Why? Well, probably because people will use that to hammer on things, right? Also to give a little bit of counter weight to the blade, because the tang only goes to like here, right? So they put a heavier cap on this to act as a counterweight. So again, right, super functional, great knife, and that's also represented in the design, right? Yeah, and so these are the things I believe about functionality and good design, and then all that went out of the window because I bought an Italian stiletto. Looks like this. And the stiletto is just not at all a functional knife, right? The usability is terrible on this. Why is this? Well, it's just not a good cutting tool, because you have the very, very long blade here, which virtually has no belly. That's already not so good for cutting. And then it's very thick. It's 3 millimeters thick, and you have the thickness the thickness or go down all the way until to the middle. Oh, you see that? And then there's just so little space for it to taper out and become thin, right? So that this part here behind the secondary bevel is still very thick, maybe still a millimeter thick, which makes for a terrible cutting tool. And in the front, right, they're still doing it. You still have the fattest part in the middle, not as fat as in the back, right? But still very, very thick in the middle, and there's so little space here for it to taper. So the stiletto does not cut very well. It's a stabby knife, right? You have all the mass of the blade right behind the point and right behind the middle. So it's a stabby knife, but not even for that it's particularly good because it's, you know, not that rugged. Um, so is that a functional blade design? No, no, definitely not. And there are other parts that aren't very functional, and still I just happen to love this stiletto. By the way, this is not what you might expect. This is not an automatic stiletto. This is a manual stiletto. You probably noticed by the nail nick, right? Most stilettos you can buy now from Italy are manual, right? When we use a button here, right? But this is still, well, this is a manual stiletto. Those were also made. It has a back lock. Again, right? Oh, you could say, oh, but the functionality here, right? The straight handle, yeah, all right, that's fine. The backlock, this humped backlock, there's an idea to this, right? That you could press down on this backlock with maybe this finger or your pinky, and then depress it, and the blade would unlock and you would swing it shut. But this one is very stiff, so I cannot really do this. But that's the idea of the humped backlock. But anyway, these manual stilettos, you cannot really find these so easily anymore. I think the Chinese have taken over this particularly niche of the market, and manual stilettos are not made in Italy anymore right now. Automatic stilettos, of course, are. This one is a stiletto made by Falcon in Maniago. That's a subsidiary of Campolin, right? Campolin is a maker of automatics also, and so this was maybe their non-automatic subsidiary. I don't know if they still make knives. They don't seem to make these non-automatic stilettos. But so, okay, I still have to talk about the lack of functionality here a little bit, right? Because it's staggering. So you look now at the handle, and you see, okay, that's horn, cow horn. Oh, pretty nice. This butt cap, yeah, okay, it's heavy. Doesn't really serve any function other than looking good. But okay, fine. Um, Now this like guard, or you know, this resembles a hilt on a dagger maybe. This serves no function, right? In fact, it's kind of uncomfortable. If your thumb pushes against this, it's uncomfortable, and your index finger at the bottom also, you know, it's not particularly comfortable. Also, it prevents you from putting your thumb on this lock. This is now a pick lock, right, where there is a pin. Well, now you can't see it, a pin here, right, that goes into the lock bar. Now it would be great, right, to put your thumb on it and then get a little bit more control, but no, it doesn't really, it doesn't really work because of this guard. It's really just for looks, right? It serves basically no function. Um, yeah, and that's another thing that's not particularly functional. Um, and yet, I must say, I really I really like the stiletto. It just looks so pretty. Um, Another thing is that the production quality isn't particularly high on these. Maybe that's another lack of function, right? This pin lock, inherently there will be a little bit of blade play, right? Because the pin and this thing, they aren't fitting together that well, and they don't self-adjust, right? Once this is locked, this does not change over time, right? This will always be just like this. If now this were to become looser here, right, or if the hole were to widen, it wouldn't self-adjust. There would always be some kind of play. And there is. You know, this one's not particularly bad. I'll get to that later. Yeah, not so good. In fact, quite a few things were wrong with this when I first got this stiletto. Well, vintage new, right? Maybe According to the baggie that it came in, maybe this was made in 1998, but I can't be entirely sure. It's just a number on the bag, right? When this was vintage new to me, there were all kinds of things that weren't great with the production quality. And I'm not saying that, oh, they should be, right? Because this was not an expensive knife when it was new. Maybe something like, in today's money, 40 US dollars, right? You would pay, or 35. But at the same time, right, the Chinese now make lots of great stuff for $40 that doesn't have such problems. Things I had to fix. There was glue all around this shield that had to be sanded off and buffed back to gloss again, right? That was pretty bad actually. There were some frilly parts of the horn, right, where the horn has little frills. I had to sand that off too and fix it. Then the blade actually had more play than now, and I had to carefully peen that with with a hammer and a steel bolt, and a little anvil, so that now it's pretty acceptable, pretty nice actually. I had to do this too. There, I had to. You probably cannot see this very well. I had to sand a little notch in here. You have to do that very carefully. You can't do that too much. Very carefully, so that now the blade has more accentuated closing. Right now, this closes nice and tight, nice and shut. It wasn't like this before when it was new. In fact, the blade maybe would stick out just a bit. Not really, but you could get your nail under it and get it out, right? So I had to do this too. All these things I had to fix myself because the production quality on these just wasn't that high at the time. And I don't know if you buy a $100, $120, $150 automatic stiletto, if it will be much better. I hope so for the people who buy them. But so yeah, that's another thing that you really don't have to put up with these days, right? You don't have to put up with blade play, and you don't have to put up with glue on your handles. That's just something you have to put up with when you want to have a pretty Italian stiletto like this one. So yeah, it's a little bit like being attracted to a person who is a real hottie, but also a bit of a nutcase. That's all I have to say to this. The stiletto is not very practical, but I love it. I also made a sheath for it. So, oh, maybe I should say, well, there are some aspects that are pretty nice about it, right? It's a 4-inch blade, and yet it's pretty light. Yeah, it's maybe lighter than you would expect, even though this is all metal parts, right? Brass and the nickel silver, and of course the steel, and the pins also being steel, I hope, right? Because, right, this is super thin, this is super thin. It's very light, and that's nice. It's a long blade that, of course, gets into everything really well because it's so thin, right? If you want to dig around in things, yeah, then that's good too. It can be an EDC blade, even though it doesn't cut that well. You know, it's not that it's dull. It's like you go to your kitchen right now, you find a kitchen knife that you haven't sharpened in a few months, right, or in 1 month. And it's not the greatest knife in the world, the greatest kitchen knife. It's about that sharp, right? It cuts paper and cardboard and thread and twine well enough, right? But definitely something with a thin blade like this, and this basically is an awesome cutter, will cut, I don't know, 3 times better than this one because it's just so damn fat. The stiletto, it's a pretty boy. That's all I have to say to this. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.